We're here for the 29th day of the Global Festival of Yoga that has been a beautiful project of Dr. Vinaya Chandra Banavati and Anuradha Chowdhury, bringing together yogic voices from around the world, a lot of wisdom. And if you've missed sessions, they're available on the Indica Yoga website for you to look at your leisure. My name is Marianne, and I'm from the Global Peace Initiative of Women, GPIW, and we've been a proud partner of this program and helped to find some of these amazing speakers. GPIW was started 20 years ago by Dina Miriam, who will also be joining us on this session. It has been a program in which we bring together voices of wise elders, young people, people of very diverse backgrounds and regions to listen, to reflect, to think about ways to create new systems that can create lasting change on the outer and create more of a unity among humanity and show us new ways in which we can live in a loving relationship with Earth and all of life. So this has been our work for 20 years. We've met some incredible people from everywhere, and we continue these dialogues and conferences in person whenever we can, and now with you here on the internet when we cannot. And so this morning, the session is going to be on unity with nature and voices from Indigenous environmentalism. And I'm going to, our moderator this morning, whom I'm going to introduce, is Daniel Abreu. Daniel is one of our young climate leaders that GPIW has worked with over many years and brought to many gatherings around the world because his voice is very important. He is from the Dominican Republic, where he currently lives. He really stands at the crossroads of climate change activism and spiritual ecology. He has been a negotiator at the UN climate summits for his nation, but he also delves deeply into the spiritual aspects of the ecological movement and what we call the inner dimensions of climate change. What are the inner shifts in our hearts and minds that we need to make in order for outer changes to last? For all our environmental work to be lasting, we have to change our hearts and our minds. And so Daniel has been exploring the messages of the whales and the dolphins at this moment in time. What have they come to share with humanity? This is a deep passion of his. And he and his wife, Alaya, take people on journeys in the Caribbean, in Central America, to connect with nature, to connect with your own heart and to connect that with nature so that we too can receive the wisdom that nature wants to share with us at this time when we're in this critical moment. He's also a facilitator in the Work That Reconnects of Joanna Macy. This is a fantastic work of group work and methods that bring the individual the courage and the hope that we need to act wisely at this moment of social and ecological upheaval. So he is a facilitator in this work. He is also creating environmental curriculums for young people in his country on how to care for the planet and the earth and the environment. And he is writing a book, or has already written a book, a children's book on the messages of the whales. So I bring you now to Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. It is a great blessing to be introducing and moderating this wonderful sharing of beautiful people and following the roots of one of the roots of what it means, yoga, that it's the unity. It is a great honor to open the space for a dialogue from a diverse perspectives, connecting us to the wisdom of nature. So we will have the opportunity to have this conversation with different wisdoms from different traditions. And I will be introducing each one of our panelists and just sharing a little bit of their biography and then opening the floor for a first remark. Then we will have a more flowing, open conversation. We will then be open for any questions that people from the audience can have. If you can see, there is in the Zoom platform, if everybody can see on the right, down on the right, there is an option for Q&A, so you can post any questions you have. So we will have a more interactive dialogue with all the wisdom that is going to be flowing from the conversation. I would like to begin introducing Judy Lief, who's going to be our first speaker opening the floor of today's conversation. Judy is a Buddhist teacher. She's a writer and an editor. She was a very close student of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who empowered her as a teacher. And she received the title of senior teacher by Sakyam Mipang Rinpoche, the head of the Shambhala Buddhist lineage. And Judy is very active traveling and writing, especially on the field of death and dying. And she's an author of Making Friends with Death, a Buddhist guide to encountering mortality. She's also a member of the Madison Dean Initiative, and she has edited many books for Shambhala publications. She's also a trustee of Naropa, and she's been a president and an adjunct faculty from a long time. And she's very also active in the GPIW, our curator of today's conversation, and the Contemplative Alliance. I will open the floor to Judy. So you want to add anything about yourself, and we will love to hear your first perspectives on today's sharing. Welcome, Judy.
Thank you, Daniel. Well, it's an honor to be here with can you hear me? Does it sound okay?
Yes, the sound is very good.
Good, okay. Well, it's an honor to be here, and I understand we're each making some brief opening remarks. So I've been thinking, obviously, in preparing for these dialogue on the whole notion of nature and unity, and from my perspective, it's not a question of unity with nature. There's no separation. We are nature. We're within nature, and within us is nature. That we actually begin from a point of being nature. And so I'm not quite sure, what it is to join with nature, as though nature is something outside of us that we can observe or join with. So that's a question that arises for me. I come from the Buddhist tradition, and in the understanding of this tradition, there's a phrase, mother sentient beings, and the sense of all beings, all aspects of nature over millennia of time and space have been our very own mothers. So a sense of literal relations of family relations. We have been everyone's mother, everyone's been our mother in one way or another over the vastness of time. And there's also the sense of infinite web of interrelations and connections, you could say, of macrocosm, microcosm elements, a sense of interweaving of patterns. Sometimes this is talked about in terms of the elements. One way that is looked at is in terms of what in this tradition are referred to as the 5 elements. And there's a sense of, to begin with, to connect with nature, we have to connect with the elements of our own embodied experience. So it's not simply musing about ideas about nature, but how connected are we with the simple elements of our immediate experience. So, for instance, there are beautiful meditations based on tuning in not to the qualities that together, when they are in harmony, support life, and when they are disharmony, are harmful to living beings and to well living on this earth. For instance, there's a quality of the earth There's a sense of the earth within you, the solidity and the flesh of your own body is so intimately connected with the earth outside, the solidity of the earth. It said we honor the earth, which supports all beings, the reliable sense of gravity and weight and solidity. And we honor the water that flows through our bodies. So much of our body is literally water, and a sense of the cleansing power of water. So the sense of these elements within us are the same, the elements outside us, and these qualities all have to be present: solidity and flowing and cleansing. And water also combines, joins things. You mix something, add water, combines things. There's connecting with a fire, the power for the heat and energy and warmth of the body, and the warmth that comes from the benevolence of the sun warming the earth and allowing things to grow and flourish. And there's a sense of connecting with what's called the wind. The wind is a breath. You know, there's a lot of focus on the breath nowadays. The breath as a wind element seems to be very disturbed in terms of the coronavirus and also the Black Lives Matter movement, the sense of breath and the breath being disrupted. So here there's a sense of breath element, the wind that is so powerful but cannot be visually, cannot be seen, and the sense of wind blows away mental cobwebs and dust is a quality of energy of life. And then there's the element that's not usually listed in Western elements, is called space. The element of space, which is connected with consciousness, and the idea that the element of space pervades everything. So it's a sense of vastness, and also a sense of space. Space removes the tendency to solidify our experience or to reduce experience. Sense of vastness of consciousness, so powerful that cannot be grasped, and so much of experience is so powerful and cannot be grasped. So I think the emphasis is on interconnectedness and harmony, and the inner world, literal, physical, interworld, literal, physical, outer world are intimately connected. And the other thing that came up for me, just as an opening reflections of, you know, so much in the world of contemplative practice, there are so many stories of going off into the wilderness or spending many years in a cave, or, I think so much about urban society now and the disconnect from the natural world. Even it's hard to see the stars anymore in many places, and how to create a healing connection with the natural world for so many people who don't have the luxury to be out in nature in the way that some of us are able to do. So those are some of my opening thoughts on this discussion. And so I'd like to pass it on to whoever is next.
Thank you, Judy, for opening the floor with beautiful reflections on how the so many is already inside us, how we are the nature and the elements, how much we don't have to look so much outside to understand the unity. I would like now to continue this conversation, introducing my dear friend, Shephali Patel, who is right now in New York City, the USA, and it's a beautiful, beautiful blessing for me to introduce Shefali, who is a joyfully engaged in the intertwined work of ecological and cultural regeneration. Shefali explores this work through her roles as a traditional ecologist, farmer, educator, and artist activist. She designs, builds, and empowers projects that gather and weave our fragmented worlds back together into a whole more beautiful, resilient, and powerful than before. This introduction that I'm making of Shefali is on her own words. She has a beautiful poetic way of describing what she does, which I love. And she's right now under the tutelage of the Living Landscapes. Well, actually, she has been forever been on the tutelage of the living landscapes, beings, and the elements that she serves. Shefali is learning how to nourish and protect the wildness in our eyes, spirits, hearts, and minds. Much of her work involves bringing the wisdom of ancient cosmologies current to help us cross the false divides of science and spirituality, knowledge and art, humility and power, love and death. She is deeply certain that these are the foundations and forces needed to guide us in igniting our collective creative imaginations and fueling the revolutions we actually want, ones that close out violent, extractive systems and heal us into a future of peace, wonder, and beauty. Shefali is holding close the answer of one of her spiritual teachers gave to the question, what is love? And his answer was, love is that which can make the invisible visible. And this is what is guiding all her current projects and intentions. So I will open the floor for Shefali if she wants to compliment anything more about yourself. I know you have also a new initiative that we will have space at the end, so everybody that wants to continue connecting with you, Shefali. It is a great joy to be sharing this space with you and open you the space. And Shefali, you are right now still on mute, so you can.
Thank you.
Now, yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
I was just thanking you, Daniel, and just saying that it's such an honor to be here with you, my soul friend, and my mentors and teachers, Tiokasin, Dina, Marianne, new friends, Jenia, and Judy, who I've actually read about her and looked up to her for a while. And so this is a real blessing. So thank you for that. Yeah, there's nothing to add. I feel like all of our work, the generation that Daniel and I too, it's hard to describe what we do because we're kind of figuring it out and we're trying to be responsive to what the world needs. So yeah, in terms of thinking about our session today, I really like to come back to basics. I have a very simple mind, and so I need to break everything down so I can understand it and approach it authentically. And so I was thinking about what yoga means. It's such an overused and misunderstood term. And so it's a noun and it's a verb, but it's everything that lies beyond nouns and verbs. We know it to be oneness. It talks about the union of all things, and that there is a unity in all things through interconnection, that there is a force, a living force that flows through all things. And because in this material reality, this material universe that is broken up into a myriad of things, there is inside of us, if we're very quiet, we feel this very deep longing. It's like a wanting that's almost nostalgic. There's a missingness and a desire to move beyond the myriad of things and come back into the one again. And that deep longing is love. And so it coexists and flows through all of us. And if you also look at the root of yoga, the etymology of it in Sanskrit, the root is the word yuj, which means to join. And so it speaks to that union, but sometimes it's also used in the context of thinking about yoking, like holding onto things, yoking cattle or a horse. And so in some ways too, I think that yoga speaks to the fact that this understanding that there is a life force that flows through all of us, that connects us all, and that there is this wanting to connect into the oneness, is the one thing that we can hold on to guide us in moving through our journey of being through this world. And we are engaged in a journey of being, because human beings are not born, they're made. And I think this is the one thing that makes our species a little bit different in terms of other animals. And so we have to make ourselves, and we have to understand and remember in progressive iteration what our roles and our orientation in a larger interconnected world is, and what that means for our relationships with everything inside of the world. And so this understanding and the practice, the constant practice of coming back to making ourselves, is something that you see in the rituals and the practices and the stories and the traditions of all of the more ancient earth-based cultures around the world. And we are, in a way, we've been separated from that for thousands of years due to invasion, colonization, all these things. And so all of the ways of being that ancient cultures had, with moving, working, celebrating, grieving, worshiping, consuming, sacrificing, with the flows and the power and the beauty of the natural world, to come back to understanding how to make ourselves, has been distanced from us. And so a lot of the practices of yoga fall into this endeavor to bring us back. And it's a way for us to know and remember that we are part of nature. But I don't think that knowing this, knowing that there is a life force connecting to all of us, knowing that we have to remake ourselves, knowing it conceptually is not enough, clearly, because many people do know this, do accept this, but we're not caring for the earth as we should. We're not caring for the earth as we care for our own bodies. And in fact, we're not even caring for our bodies and our minds and our hearts properly right now either. And so I think that we're missing a part of our work. And I think that part of our work is to also engage with the love part of the question, Big L. And what we need in our world right now, to Judy's point too, like we're fragmented. Some of us don't have access to nature. Some of us don't have access to all of our traditions and knowledge. And so we need to start working with a very practical and very embodied spirituality that takes all of the concepts and conceptualizations and brings it back into our bodies in a very visceral way. And so in terms of yoga, one of the most accessible and tangible practices of yoga is the one that people think of first when they hear that word. And that's the asana practice, where we're moving and working with our bodies. And so I think what this is calling on us is to go back to basics, just like we looked at the origins of the word yoga. What is an asana practice? Can we come back to this practice in a very simple, very humble, very authentic way? When we're standing in Tadasana or Samasthiti, standing pose, mountain pose is what it is. Can we stand there, understand that sum, the root sum, is balance, is equality, is standing in the present? Can we face the truth, continue to sit and witness, never break our gaze from what is in front of us, no matter how terrifying or how beautiful it is, just like mountains do, and cultivate the kind of presence that mountains have through that practice? Can we be like the musician who understands the word sum in a different way? Sum is the beginning and ending point in a rhythmic cycle. that doesn't have a beginning or end. And so some exists all on its own. The job of the musician is to meet some and to understand that we are also in a cycle, that we are moving forward into what was before, that we are meeting all of the people before us back to where we were, that we're meeting death in the beginning at the same time. Can we stand and really feel our footprints? Like really understand that the people that will come after us, our children, our descendants, will have to walk the grooves that your feet make on the earth and have to swim through the frothy wake that we create as we move through the river, and that there is no other option, that everything is touched by everything. And then can we take all of that immensity of the mountain and the solidity and the responsibility of all this, and then let it dissolve into becoming the ocean as we flow up and down and fall through our body as we move into our asana practice and move into the other life forms that is also our life. Vrikshasana, tree pose. Can we become the tree? Can we breathe and sway like a tree and really understand what it is to be a tree in the world? Matsyendrasana, fish pose, moving inside of a fish, feeling what it's like to be inside of a fish's body, taking on the sideway twisting movement that a fish's tail makes when it's swimming through the ocean. Kurmasana, tortoise pose. Can we fold into ourselves the way a tortoise does? Can we feel what it's like to be the tortoise in the moment? Can we really understand at the most basic level the roles that all of these beings play in keeping our world together, and the fact that all of them are in us and that we are in there. And in all of those spaces, as we shift and phase into all of these forms, can we feel the space in all of it that longs to be filled with love? And so once we can do that, we have created an awareness, a sensitivity, a compassion, and a sharpness of mind to be able to look out into the world and see the gaps in logic and reason, ethics, and wisdom in our current systems, and see where it's failing us in actually embodying and activating the things and the values and the principles that we hold deepest. And then the question becomes, what can we do now? How can we enact our orientation and our roles, the ones that we learn through the stylized practice, into a world and bring integrity to our beliefs and our wisdom traditions and our stories, and honor all of the people that come before us and come after us and are with us right now. And so I think these are the questions and these are the places that we need to engage with, and we need to take our practices and our wisdom traditions and actually revisit them in the most basic way, and then bring them back to where we are right now and figure out how we can work towards a future that we actually want and that embodies the values that we hold dear. So yeah, I think that's all I want to say for now. Thank you for giving me space.
Thank you, Shefali, for the beautiful reflection. Thank you for bringing in the wisdom of the practice of yoga and how can we become more conscious. Each one of us that are making our whatever tradition that we are following from the yoga roots. I believe and I understand is very interesting to remember that the ancient rishis, they observed nature to get inspired. They were observing the non-ego beings, how they flowed. And many of the asanas, many of the postures are actually, they come from wise humans that were observing how animals and how beings of nature were in harmony. And so that's the kind of humility that we can learn back and remember for our current challenges. Thank you, Shefali. And we will continue now the conversation. I would like to introduce another great friend. I also consider one of my teachers. Is the great Tiokasin Ghosthorse, who is from the Cheyenne River Lakota Nation of South Dakota in the what is known today as the United States, Turtle Island, from the indigenous perspective of the Lakota Nation. He's an international speaker on peace, Indigenous and Mother Earth perspective. He's a survivor of the reign of terror from 1972 to 1976 on the Pine Ridge Cheyenne River. Tiokasin has a long history of indigenous activism and advocacy. He's an active board member of Simply Smile and the Center of Earth Ethics. Tiokasin was a 2016 nominee of the Nobel Peace Prize from the International Institute of Peace Studies and Global Philosophy. He was selected also in 2016, the Native Arts and Cultures Foundation National Fellowship in Music. He's a great musician. I can testify from my own experience. Tiokasin is the founder, host, and executive producer of a radio show that has been going on from 27 years, an award-winning program called The First Voices Radio. And I would just like to open the floor to be connecting to the wisdom of Tiokasin. A great blessing, Tiokasin, to have you with us.
Okay, first of all, do you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, is it okay? Is it good? Okay,
yeah,
great.
Good.
Thank you, Judy and Shefali, for making what I have to say much softer. Okay, because sometimes I'm just direct and I'm in a china shop or something, and I'm just barging through. And I guess that's the whole idea is, and I'm presently with the as you saw the icon I have my hand over, and just the awareness that something so intelligent brought to us to more or less put us all in the same playing field. And also I refer to the virus, but also to what I feel is that to understand what you've been explaining about yoga and how I could probably translate a little bit of that in our so-called practice. The way I'm thinking about mitakuye oyasi and how one has a relationship with nurturing. When I say nurturing, it's not nature as a noun, because if you see nature as a noun, then it's away from us. So if you're in the nurturing of it, there's no need to try to find words to connect in a sense. So mitakuye oyasi is not a noun, it's all in one motion, and one motion describing a lot. And I have an uncle who basically said that there's a way to live with earth and a way not to live with earth, and we choose the way of earth. And it's hard to do that. In a conceptual way, you cannot live with the earth, but in a way of practical mystery, I would call it, to understand how the cosmos is really alive and all that is out, as you say, in nature. And so when I refer to myself being part of the nurturing, that means I am actually caring, giving care, not taking care. I'm giving care to the nurturing. And so it's one motion. And to translate from a language that is mostly verb into something subjective or very objectifying, I guess you'd say, to a language is where most of my work comes from. And sometimes it feels very direct into English and almost offensive to some people. And I want to speak from that heart of it, from that very direct heart of being able to understand. So Tiokasi Chetanzi Wikia Paha Michaje Oyate Tokahe Wichakie Chante Washte Napechu Zapielo Le Unkipiki Hohe Washtelo, and try to be able to recall our familiarity with the earth that's been missing a lot from where I come from. It's semi-missing because a lot of us are still with our lands here in Turtle Island or the United States or even the Western Hemisphere. And a lot of us as Native people have that backbone of understanding how it is to be with the earth. So when you're living with the earth, it's much different than living on the earth. And so the languages that we speak have no words for domination. And so I was thinking about how to share, sort of paraphrase what Shefali was referring to, what I thought she was like. We in a sense, we don't want our, so this is what we do. We want our children to walk their dreams, but we want our children to walk our dreams, but not our environmental nightmares. And when I think about that, what do we have to tether? Do we tether things that make us feel good temporarily, the comforts that we have, and to say that we're environmental or natural, and try to go into this paradigm, this post-paradigm thought process of prophecy that a lot of Indigenous peoples are already in and are preparing, rather than pulling in a gloom and doom that we have to do something. No, it's required that we do something. And so when I think about how do we tie this together in a global manner, and to know what yoga is something I really don't know the definition of. And so when I said I'm in my garden, or I'm in the fire, I'm in the water, I'm breathing the air, or I'm speaking my language, I really feel there's a difference in getting outside of the box, and rather than trying to get ourselves back into the box and make it comfortable and normal, because that's the current thread that we all are following, is when are things going to get back to normal because of something that is so natural and so intelligent that changes all of our lives, and even how the earth responded to herself with the more the birds, the more nature, the more nurturing that went on. I mean, I have bears in our backyard here that are showing up. There's much more activity, which is because we left the earth alone for at least a month here in the United States, or Turtle Island. We left her alone. And this is how she responded, just quickly. She's all the generations that we talk about. We talk about the 7th generation, the next generation, the youth, but she's all of those. So the perspective would be that there's really no sense of time with Mother Earth. And when I think about that, it's outside of the dogma of saying that Earth is one. It's a relationship to all the cosmologies. And if we have in the way of being the Lakota, that the cosmology is also inside of you, which Judy referred to, and the cosmology is much bigger within than we see with our eyes. So the practice of mystery is clean water, clean air, clean land, clean food, all of those things that we benefit. So it's actually changing our thinking in the sense that when I come from the garden, and I get up in the mornings and I go, or in the evenings and I go, and I'm singing songs and I'm talking to the seeds, and I'm singing the planting songs for each of those seeds. And you see the results is that they respond to you by, you're singing DNA songs, if that makes sense. You're singing DNA songs that come from the ancient people, and to carry on their prophecies is what we would consider the Akantu. And I know I'm going everywhere, and in my mind, but in my heart, it's Akantu. Akantu simply means beings from the ancient future now. So if we understand that without predictability of the future or regrettability of the past, we understand that all of that ancient future is walking here now. And we've always had this. It's not a coolest thing to say or practice. It's always that. and the consciousness is here. And once we understand the consciousness, we begin to feel what the earth is telling us, what it's saying. So we go and we understand that the earth is listening to us. It's not the fact that only that we have to go and listen to the earth, but to understand that she's already listening to us, and our responsibility is to find out how is she listening to the earth, because she is the example. She is the example of how to apply practical mystery. We call it wakan, which means to consciously apply consciousness, or to consciously apply mystery to everything. And once you're in that, you can't leave it. I'm telling you, you cannot leave it. You feel it, you're excited, you feel like you're 3 years old, you feel like you're 90 years old, all at once. And I think that to me is so much where you feel the earth, and I sit and play flute to the garden, and the birds show up, all the birds show up, and we're just kind of singing together and playing together, and the plants are understanding all of this communication. So it's just not one way or the other. And I really think that the earth has that way for us. And if we feel her intuition, she thinks intuitively with that consciousness, and keeps bringing that forward all the time, no matter what. She's been consistent with the balance. But I think a good way to understand it is the extractive way of being as humans are, is that once how to stop the extraction is to take ourselves away from the center of living. In other words, of life, is that we have been anthropocentric for far too long. And once we are away from putting human at the center, then we start understanding that that center is everywhere. As one of my ancient elders would say, he said, the center of the universe is everywhere. And that feels true to me. And it's not my perspective. It's a giving perspective of generosity to share what's within your heart, not so much conceptually. And I think things open wide open, and I'm really humble, because it feels like I'm just stumbling through English here to try, excited to feel, and my heart to express a little bit of this language, and taking all of this, I'm excited, taking all of this Lakota, all this feeling, and trying to put it into the English. It's a task to turn that all around and squeeze it into a little language. And so I'm doing what I can, and thank you for joining. And to all of you, I don't have much to say, but I probably will later once I'm comfortable. But thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Tiokasin. Thank you for sharing all the beautiful wisdom. And thank you for making your best to express in English. We have talked many times about how the Lakota language is such a multi-layer and rich and complex language that is pretty much impossible to express much of the wisdom from the Lakota into such as more closed language as the English is. So, and for what I've been reading from many of the participants, I can see that we are feeling your message, not only hearing the words. So the wisdom is coming through. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I want now to introduce our fourth panelist, and with Jenia Mukherjee, we will complete this first round of introductory remarks, and then we will be flowing into a conversation. Jenia is an assistant professor at the HSS department in Kharagpur. Her experience spans across transdisciplinary water research. Her most recent book, Blue Infrastructures, actually from this year, 2020, is already driving a lot of attention. She has completed a Rachel Carson Fellowship in Munich, in Germany, very recently. Has been completed also this year. She is in the advisory board for the India Youth Water Network. She's also the principal Indian partner of CLOC, the Knowledge to Action in South Asia, to promote and facilitate cooperation in research and education on environmental sustainability and social well-being with Swiss networks. She has completed different projects funded by international and national agencies. And I'm thrilled to open the floor to Jenia to continue this so enriching conversation that we are exploring right now. Welcome, Jenia.
Isha Vasyam Nidam Sarvam Yat Kincha Jagatyan Jagat Tena Tyaktena Bhunjitha Ma Grudha Kasya Swithanam. This is the opening verse of Ishopanishad, which says that, which explicitly explicates that the universe with all its creatures belongs to the Lord of nature. And here no species is either superior or inferior. No planetary being has the right to encroach upon the privileges of other planetary beings. And all of us can actually enjoy the bounties of nature by giving up greed and excesses. So I think to a great extent, this is the core, this is the fundamental essence of South Asian variety of environmentalism in which I'm interested in. And I think that the panel, the title of the panel and the theme of the panel is extremely provocative because it enables us to think about indigenous environmentalism. So I want to talk about South Asian variety, which can be situated within the two extreme, environmentalisms of, ecocentrism, which is propagated or which was propagated by the deep ecologists on one hand, and anthropocentrism, which is the outcome of the modernist, capitalist, globalist times. So I think that, South Asian variety of environmentalism can be considered as one of the very strong, radical, and powerful perspectives, which has the, which can significantly contribute to the emerging domain of environmental humanities, and also definitely, to the mainstream debates relating to global environmental sustainability. Now, the big question is, how are we going to explore or tap this South Asian knowledge or this South Asian variety of environmentalism? So I think this is manifested in the vast corpus of Sanskrit texts and traditions. So if you want to pursue this South Asian variety of indigenous environmentalism, we need to capture the element of respect or reverence towards nature, which is evident in the Vedic hymns and ritualistic practices. There are numerous historical sources in ancient India, for example, the Vedas, the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, the Upanishads, that talk about constructive activities like plantation of trees, excavation of canals, ponds, to harness and nurture ecosystem services. And we also have multiple environment-based folk tales, folklores, myths, and mythologies in the Jatakas, in our epic literature, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and also in the Panchatantras. So I think South Asia, it visualized and it encountered the formulation, evolution, consolidation, and development of different branches of sciences based on nature. For example, Ayurveda, the science of medicine, forestry, ethnoforestry, and we also had array of water techniques. And the beautiful part, of this water techniques or water science prevalent in ancient India was that all these techniques were absolutely, they were tuned to the geographical specificities of particular contexts in particular ecosystem zones. So what I mean to say is that, the water techniques which were prevalent in Northeast India were very different from the water techniques which were practiced and pursued in arid part of the subcontinent, for example, Rajasthan or Gujarat. Again, very dissimilar from the water management practices which were prevalent in deltaic Bengal. So this was the diversity which we had, but unfortunately, somewhere this tradition, this knowledge system has got lost. But again, the good news is that people are trying to kind of bring back this knowledge system, and I think that the way through which this knowledge system should be brought back, and absolutely this has to be brought back, is through rigorous and in-depth research, where social scientists and people from the field, and also I would like to say that it is not only in this written traditions, but also in there is a living archive. So I would also like to very quickly share this concept of living archive, which we could formulate, our team could formulate when we started doing our research on fluidscapes in one of our projects. So by living archive, I mean that how the oral history is being carried on generation after generation. So there has been an intergenerational transmission of knowledge. So it is very important for us to really, kind of trade this path, trade this alternative pathway, this alternative variety of environmentalism, which I would like to consider as pre-modern, pre-colonial, and also anti-hegemonic. So I think, I think I can talk about this more during Q&A session, or if I get an opportunity to kind of elaborate a little more on this concept. So just with this provocative argument of bringing to the fore, South Asian variety of environmentalism within the emerging domain of environmental humanities and within the mainstream debates of global environmental sustainability is the key thing, or the key highlight which I wanted to discuss. Thanks.
Thank you, Jenia, to bring these provocative ideas, for enriching the conversation. Thank you for especially bringing this concept of the living archives, that it feels a very expanding concept that can link us back to the ancient wisdom and see how we could make it relevant and make it visible and bring it back to our current times. I would like to open the floor again to all of our panelists. Now that we have all of you that have shared is new reflections that has come through you hearing each other from the position that you opened with. If Judy or Shefali or Tiokasin and even yourself, Jenia, the floor is open for more reflections.
I was reflecting on the sense of hegemony, a sense of domination, and the sense of gratitude that came up through many of the presentations. And I was thinking of a phrase from a Buddhist scripture that says, "Just as the earth and the other four elements eternally nourish and sustain all beings, so may I, with a boundless heart, nourish and sustain all living beings." And I was thinking of the the gratitude and functional language, so much as functional language of trying to make something happen before actually being with our experience, the kind of quality of how to make the changes that we need to make without having it be so aggressive and trying to force things in our direction.
Thank you, Judy, for this reflection. For what I understand, it is also learning how to live an experiment from nature's perspective, which is all about flow, which is all about cycle, which is all about letting it be the life experiences and not forcing them just on the way we want them to be. That might be one of our key human issues, not letting the cycles unfold as nature has designed them. Thank you, Judy. I don't know if Shefali or Tiokasin or Jenia, would you like to share another reflection that has come through you, listening to each other?
Hey, I'll go with that. Can you? Thank you, Judy, for that aggressiveness. I think there's a division. I think a lot when people are understanding that there is the division between men and women, earth and sky. We're constantly doing dualities, and to bring that to light, I think it's startling, and I think people will misinterpret that as aggressive because it's new to us, just as the coronavirus was aggressive. And what we did with it, right, is understand it as part of us, that there is always this way of nature that we've always seemed to have made the enemy. And that's because, I would say, is because of our anthropocentrism, thinking that it's all about the human when it's part of all of us in how the animals, how everything else deals with disease, because they also get disease too. And you see that domination, as you mentioned, is a great part of that. And I think that if the humans are dominating and using language of domination and war and division, is that disease of conscience comes in, but it won't enter the consciousness, because consciousness doesn't have to deal with to be conscience. Consciousness is so vast that conscience has nothing to do with it. That's to me a more or less a human derived concept. So if we're feeling in without concept, having to put things in order from A to Z to beginning to the end, that's a certain way of thinking where I was feeling before my excitability. I had to put everything into a time capsule and say it all so it made sense. And now that I'm a little more relaxed, I can put it in a way that understanding the consciousness of the earth is so easy for some and maybe not for others, to feel the practice. She's showing you how to practice this relationship, not so much a connection, but a practice of relationship. And to not put, and you've heard me say this before, to not educate our wisdom out of ourselves and come with application to earth. We're going to do this onto the earth. We're going to do this to earth so that we survive. It's to sustain ourselves, but not the rest of earth in relationship. And I think somehow we are still hoping for an advancement or evolutionary process of the human so that we can better ourselves, but yet we're leaving the earth behind. Living with the earth is a primary function of many indigenous folks, to have peace with the earth rather than on the earth in domination form. And so we can't plan the earth. We can't plan to put something here or plan that. And I often have to understand myself, to be friends, to be respectful to myself before I'm respectful to others, to other life forms. And so, yeah, that life is it's amazing somehow, where it's constantly in the form when I'm out there in the ground, with the water, all of those ancient beings, those archives, as Jenia would say, these archives of the ancients are still here, and we see them as the continuing life forms. And if that's getting too far away from it, but they actually are giving us their prophecy at the same time as they're giving us their ancient wisdom and their ancient knowledge, but to have that language of quantum physics as they speak has nothing to do with concepts, you see, and people are trying to find how to do that. And it's not simple as how to instructional book. It's you experiencing it. You have to experience it because it is at the ready to experience you. In fact, it is already. Earth is experiencing you, and we want to experience Earth, but with application, you see. And so I think I'll stop right there.
Thank you, Tiokasin, for furthering the conversation. I would like to open the voice for Jenia, who would like to share more reflections.
Thank you, Tiokasin, for bringing in the issue of health, which is so very important, right? We are talking about nature. We are talking about human nature, embeddedness, and interconnectedness. And this pandemic has made us aware that how health is such an important issue. So it remembers me of a particular book which I read a few years back, and this is a book which was published in 2012 by David Quammen, and the name of this book is Spillover. So he asked the question that what is health? And then he answers that health is actually a conversation between cells, molecules, tissues, protein, if not calcium, and also, I mean, a lot of other tiny actors in this enormous integrated space inhabited by the floral world and the faunal world, including human beings. So how can we ensure healthy living? We can only ensure healthy living, our very own survival and sustenance through the richness and balance of biodiversity and its dialoguing within our own cells, within our own body. So finally, I think like if we think that we are a component of nature, or rather if we also think that we are ecosystems by ourselves, then I think the way through which this can get translated into a meaningful conviction is through the internalization and interiorization of yoga. So I think the essence of yoga needs to be incorporated within the contours of our existential reality, and also as an essential way, or rather I would say mode of life. So finally, what I would like to say is that, we are in this era of the Anthropocene, and, we are living through this Anthropocene when we are more convinced than ever that non-anthropocentrism is the world order which needs to be crafted. So if we have that conviction that non-anthropocentrism needs to be crafted, then I think that one has to experience this. This can happen in the most, in the best manner possible through the practice and experience of yoga.
Yeah, I just want to echo what everyone said so far. And just to weave a little bit more into this conversation, I actually think that if we wanted to be really truthful, and if we're really embracing this non-anthropogenic perspective, coronavirus is actually not aggressive at all. If we wanted to be very truthful, it's quite compassionate for the many ways that, of the many things that we could be experiencing right now, given the accumulation of all of our ways of being on this planet. It's almost a message of hope. Like there's an indication from the universe that we are being given some guidance and some support, because this virus is revealing all of the things that we all know to be true conceptually, that like we are not human beings at the center of the universe, that we are not in charge of everything. No matter how much we think we want to plan out and design things our way, that's not always possible. That these ways of being that we want to hold on to and that we're so afraid of letting go because it might entail some level of discomfort, massive change, and a completely different orientation of what we are on the earth is not tenable and will happen whether or not we want it to. And that we are also so interconnected. Like that is the key lesson of what we're going through right now, that what happens to me will affect you, will affect everyone in the world. What happens to a bat will affect someone, a small child, halfway across the world. And that we also have the capability of responding to this, of seeing this, and of helping each other. And part of this, I want to lift up what Jenia said and what Tiokasin echoed too, about living archives and traditions. So I was born and raised in the United States, but my parents are Indian. That's the cultural heritage that I inherited. These are my lineages. And so I can say our traditions are far more vast and myriad than the container that has been placed in by all of the folks that have invaded and colonized this space. And it's primarily an oral tradition. And it involves oral traditions from every type of spirituality and tradition and group that exists in a space that isn't contained by boundaries. And so I think part of our process of decolonization is really embracing all this and working outside of a framework that was forced onto us by a different mindset, and that mindset being more of a Western Abrahamic mindset. And so once we start doing that, we will have the capability of actually creating the systems and the solutions that we need, and not working within the frameworks that exist right now, which will not yield the solutions that we need, which will not address these new lessons that we're being so compassionately given right now. And we'll also adhere to the timelines. Like we're on multiple timelines all the time. And we need to also work within it, because again, as human beings, we are not omnipotent. And so we have to work with the rest of the beings and this earth that's inside of us and we're a part of, not separately. And so, yeah, I just want to bring that up too, because there's so many social, political, economic forces involved too, in addition to us speaking about spirituality. Thank you.
Thank you, Shefali, for deepening the conversation. And I would like to begin bringing in the perspectives of the participants. There have been several comments, and it seems that the topic that has captured more the heart of many of the participants is about communication with nature. And there is a request from several participants, Tiokasin, if you could share more about the songs for the plants, for nature. If you're willing to sing a song, maybe share a little bit of what is that experience about this kind of expression of relationship, which is in one of the centers of the Lakota perspective. Yes, so there is a thirst for listening to these songs or knowing them.
Yeah, I was being in a way more specific, but general at the same time, if that makes sense. That the DNA that we feel for the earth, the empathy we feel for the earth is the beginning of that song. And if we feel empathy for the earth is the song that we maybe have forgotten. And once we're able to complete those songs and live the living archives, as Jenia would say, and I often wonder how, like Shefali lives in the city, how that would come forth, how would that do, but in practice. So if you really look at life as the notes that we're living, you know, we go up and down and we'll go sideways and backwards and frontwards, that's a song. So this is the same practice we do in the garden. We do when we're in nature. We're actually tending to nature as it tends to us. So it's a participant song. But generally, if I was to sing a song to the corn, the Wagamiza song, we often take our seed and put our song, our DNA code in our mouth, and the DNA code goes in to the earth. You know, where we think the Hopi from the Southwest of Turtle Island in the United States, they bury the corn seeds 3 to 4 feet in the earth where there's practically no water. And they hardly use any water, but they sing every day. They put their hands on the earth and they sing, and this corn comes. And it, in a month or weeks it takes to come in the desert, it comes. And here I live in the Northeast, and I put the corn seeds down maybe 10 inches, right? And it comes like within a week. And it did this because of the corn. And now my corn is standing something like 12 feet tall. And in local practice, they say knee high by 4th of July. But my corn is 10 feet tall. And it's because I'm out there every day speaking, talking to children, in a sense. And that language that I'm speaking is an indigenous language of Turtle Island. And maybe it's responding to that coded DNA within all of us. So wherever we are in the world, those indigenous folks, those living archives as we are, and it's not just being elders or olders. The elders are the earth, the rocks, which is the most mass element here is rock. And they've been through so much, and we don't refer to them as living beings or intelligence, yet in Lakota we do. They're living, they're the oyate. And so everything is living to us, everything is sentient, right? Not just plants, but everything is sentient. And to understand that consciousness, we'd have to kind of defer our conscious thinking to a practice where we accept that so easily, and we have to change, and the earth is changing, but are we as a human species changing with the earth? Are we trying to prevent our change by not revealing or practicing these living archives?
Thank you, Tiokasin, for widening the perspective. It's very beautiful to hear how there are practices which I also have seen in other places that defies agricultural science. How you can plant almost without water, and basically you are nurturing the plants with your intentions, with your own DNA, as you say. That's so amazing to hear the testimony. What we deeply know is true, and still science has not been able to confirm it, but eyes are being opened more and more. Again, I want to continue with, there is a specific question for Jenia to deepen a little bit more about the challenges of bringing back the indigenous traditions after so much, we can say degradation is actually the word that has been shared by one of the participants, Archita Chatterjee. So how do you suggest, Jenia, to come to a balance that can be achieved in regards to the human-nature interaction via Indic knowledge, keeping in mind the sensibilities of the present?
Thank you, Archita, for asking this question. This is a very pertinent and a very important question, and I think this is a question of scale. So this is often, the question which is raised, even like when I present in conferences or workshops about, the immense importance of the Indic water techniques. So they often ask this question, they raise this question that, during those times, the demographic situation, the demographic scenario, the political, economic realities were so very different from our contemporary times. So, if we kind of highlight or emphasize on ancient water techniques, wouldn't it be a kind of eulogization or romanticization of the past? So this is nothing new, but what is very important is that we need to really explore, these knowledge systems. We have to delve ourselves deep into the nitty-gritties and nuances of this system, and then try to find out their potential, whether these systems or these techniques can really be implemented at scales, even during this contemporary temporal conjuncture. So this is a big question, and there is no, I will not be able to provide you with a linear answer on this. But what I would like to say is that the knowledge system, as I mentioned, that this is there, it is evident, it is reflected, it is manifested in this tradition, in the tradition of written literature, written text, and also in the form of realized knowledge and practices, and also it is there in the quotidian livelihood practices of people, of communities who inhabit these ecosystem zones. So who are ecosystem dependent communities. So I think we also need to learn a lot from them. So I think we have to go beyond we have to go beyond from mainstream methodologies to alternative methods and methodologies like almanac forms of knowledge, like probing into mythological methodologies. So all these alternative things, I think we need to try out, because we are sure to a great extent that the way we are perceiving nature, at least since the last 2-3 centuries, at least since Renaissance Europe, and being a student of history, I think I have a little bit of agency to reflect on this temporal scale. So I think with this Renaissance and with European modernity, with scientific revolution, this human nature interconnectedness to a great extent, I mean, it was gone. And unfortunately, number of countries, of course, including South Asia, is still following the colonial legacy. So it is very important for us to kind of come out of that legacy and critically interrogate and also rethink ontologies through epistemological departures. Yeah.
Thank you, Jenia. I would like to read a comment from one of the participants that has shared a very beautiful comment. It's not a question, it feels more like a summary of some of the parts that has ring closer to Anita, who shared that each of you has talked about the connections felt, and she's emphasizing the word felt, by your traditions in some shape or form with the earth, and highlighted it by different words used in different traditions: akanta, wakan, getting back to the basics and remembering the purpose and meaning of human life and bringing practical spirituality to the forefront that will allow for more evolutionary and not revolutionary respectful dialogue and actions. I would just like to add my own comment about this evolution of practices and perceptions. And it's coming back to the origin of this dialogue, that is the yoga and unity with nature. And as I was introduced, one of my close heart practices is connecting with whales. And I've just recently came through a recent evolutionary practice that is coming from some yoga practitioners in California and the United States that have developed a new set of asanas called whale yoga, which is combining different asanas from different perspectives, and they are offered to children. So I found it very, very heartwarming to see how that these new creations and adaptations, and it's just basically a lot of imagination of different asana postures and how they relate to whale movements, whale breathing, whale jumping, and especially offered to children as a way of introducing them in a very friendly way to the practice of yoga in a very basic, essential way. So I found it a very contemporary way of how that kind of evolution is happening in simple ways that are coming through. So we have still a few more moments to more reflections. If Judy or Shefali would like to share anything more, the floor is open. or if Tiokasin and Jenia, if you feel like expanding or digging into something more that that you would like to share, of course.
I found your whale story really heartfelt, and it brought up to me how important it is to have a starting point where your heart is most touched, you know, and it brings it to much more real level to, like, I'm going to relate to nature, but relating to like a whale or a corn seed or you know, a fish or something that touches your heart is such an opening point, and it brings so much below the just so much conceptual thinking is you know, gets so much in the way of making, has to come from the heart. And for the heart, I think there has to be a particular doorway in, and you presented that so beautifully with your connection with whales. And I think it's a way so many people that might not be able to be in nature so much could have some heartfelt point of connecting nonetheless, you know, the way you described. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Judy. Yes, Shefali.
Yeah, I too very much appreciated that story. And also all the work that you do with whales. If people don't know, Daniel helps to bring folks to meditate with whales. Like, I can't imagine a more expansive and magical experience than that. I wanted to just, you know, related to some of the things that we've been talking about, and Tiokasin talks about this a lot, and I really appreciate it, about what is lost when you're trying to translate Lakota words into English. It's just not possible because English is like another thing. And, you know, we suffer the same thing. I brought up in the beginning that what does yoga even mean? It's not just a noun. It's not just a verb. It's a noun and a verb. And then it's like everything else. It's like a being, but like being is not even the correct word. And so I think, and part of the decolonization process of our minds and the moving away from extractive systems is also to come back to what yoga was to all of us originally. And that is more than just the asana and pranayama practices that you see right now, especially in America. It's been almost violently co-opted and commodified unapologetically, and it's become something that is unrecognizable. And so yoga is at core, it is this like being of oneness, like knowing that, and then working in all these different ways to reflect and embody that. You know, there's as many yoga practices as there are stars in the sky and people on this earth. And so all of the work that we've been talking about, that is yoga. This whole like bringing ourselves and our world and everything that is contained within like our fluid flow of life back to some kind of balance. That is the work of yoga. And so anyone engaged in this in a very practical way is practicing this. And so I want to just bring that up too, because our work is inherently spiritual, and in an extractive, oppressive and destructive society, there's an actual force, strategic agenda to make us not remember that. And so anyone who's doing this can know that, like, with the correct intention and the humility and the authenticity of your being, like, you are practicing yoga when you engage in this collective work that we're involved with.
Thank you, Shefali. There is a question from one of the participants, Felipe Montaño. That sounds a very Latin American name. So Felipe is asking how, this question is for any one of us, is how do we think that we can evolve? So actually the evolutionary part, it's coming back again, as a society to reconnect to nature. So how do we think that we can evolve as a society to reconnect to nature? So anyone that would like to offer any comment on this question, the floor is open.
Well, yeah, okay, I could try to a little bit. I was thinking what Shefali was saying, and thank you for that, Shefali. To follow up something that I didn't get to yet, it was basically about where is our default thinking? Is it human or is it nature? Is it coming from nature? I like to express that the languages of the earth languages, I say, that are not so involved in conceptual thinking, but rather the intuitive, the feeling of the earth, often because earth doesn't lie. And so these languages come from a trusting of earth that she provides, she gives. So if the earth doesn't lie, then these languages don't lie. And what are we telling ourselves with all of these sort of distortions? And I think about, you know, one that, not a distortion, but one that I see that happens during the summer and probably all year round here within the Lakota nations is that dancing is a yoga. So when we have our powwows, you see all the movements and we mimic the earth. And I think Jenia was saying that we're dancing, we're mimicking the earth, we're like the animals, and we're taking the positions of the trees and the sky. All this dancing is the yoga, and we're expressing the earth. And I think that, for me, I don't practice yoga, but I think that's what you were referring to, Shefali, was that the dancing of yoga is the dancing of the spirit to understand. And for me, the meditation that we do with the earth, that they are already in meditation. So I'm always meditating with the earth and my eyes are wide open. I don't close and go inside because I do not want to miss the earth. And to really, that is my default thinking, my default feeling, my default. And that's the way I feel something can change. I can't tell you how to change or what's going to take, but I think we feel the default thinking with all of us, that we see the sunset, or if we see even the bugs, or we feel for the earth. That's our default thinking, that we should think about or feel more, because that has everything to do with intuitive, the balance of the earth, the intuition that we all feel. I think that's the way to really go through what we will be going through even more, is to understand and experiencing in the earth. So with that, yeah, I think it's more with the default. Where's our default thinking? You know, is it in relationship, or is it bypassing to make us all one without ever knowing a relationship or the differences and the similarities in the same?
Thank you, Tiokasin, again for sharing more. And I will just comment that maybe you don't practice yoga as we understand it in the West, in the Indian, from the Indian tradition. From knowing you, I can say that you, maybe because you live in yoga, you live in a more, from a perspective of unity already that comes from indigenous background. So I think, and some participants has been, there are a lot of comments on the limitations of trying to limit the word yoga, or how it is used to simplify things and practices, and how yoga is such a widening, very encompassing concept. I would like to read a few comments from participants. We are almost coming to a close. So there's a lot of wisdom coming from participants. Sarita shares that, thank you everyone for bringing on the emphasis on nature. Let us adopt the word in its true sense and let the language grow. That will be yoga, she thinks. So let the language unfold and grow. Have like a living perspective. And also Anita, again, sharing, saying that teaching children to be more empathetic to the environment, flora and fauna through the mediums of dance, art, exercise, eating habits, and other modes is a great way to bring concepts of spirituality to practicality. Unfortunately, the term yoga has been morphed and sometimes denigrated to being various things to various people. A suggestion, let us try to use the word commune with whales rather than using goat yoga, whale yoga, etc., which can be confusing to people and the ancient tradition of yoga. That's interesting. I will comment a little bit more on that in a few moments. We have another questions to all the panelists that is so many yoga teachers. Well, this is a very broad comment that why so many yoga teachers and practices are so far away from wonderful yoga. I will say that we will have to define what is wonderful yoga. I believe that what we have been sharing in this dialogue is a lot about respecting the origins, the traditions, and learning directly from nature. There is another question to Jenia. So what approach can ensure a dynamic transmission of knowledge from Indic archives to living archives in the context of statecraft and environmental policy planning? You feel, Jenia, to go into this one?
I think I can quickly wrap up and can just make some closure comments if that is fine with you.
Yes.
Yes. So I think the particular question about that, why have we become so disconnected from nature, and how can we go back to nature? How can we reconnect ourselves? So this is the most important question. This is a burning question which we really need to think about, and we need to invigorate. So what I think is that, like, there are so many traditions, so many cultural practices, so many ethnic communities and groups who have their own understanding about how to deal with nature, like how to cope up, and not only cope up, how to inculcate, nurture, and harness nature. I think the problem, what we need to do is that we need to really historically and political, economically kind of contextualize this problem of the commodification of nature with the onset of the capitalist mode of production. So I know this is not the specific platform to discuss this, but I very much think that it is important for us to understand that how nature should not be commodified, because this commodification, this commodification definitely was not there, is not there in the multiple traditions that we are actually talking about in this particular panel discussion. So I think it will be very wise for us to go back to these traditions, to learn a lot from them, and if we can document, at least if we can recognize these multiple practices, if we can kind of remove the cognitive blockade that is there, so we have to really kind of expand our cognitive space. And then I think, yoga and union with nature and this, reverence to indigenous environmentalism, these are all interconnected. So I don't think that, separately we can discuss or deal with yoga, or, I very much think that all these units, yoga, nature, interconnectedness, different varieties of indigenous environmentalism, all these fragmented snippets in that sense should be coherently connected into an integrated web and a composite whole. And then, we'll be able to make sense of going back to nature and reconnect to her.
Thank you, Jenia, for your perspectives and clarifications. There's actually a question for me that one of the participants has shared that is about, so if I can share a little bit more about the experiences of talking to whales. And so I would just briefly would like to share that experience. The way I see it and the way I have experienced it is more than talking to whales. It's actually closer to one of the other participants' comments that is more engaging with them. So the first thing is that, and in congruence with everything that has been shared in this panel, is that I myself and my wife and with all the people that we go and be with the whales, we consider the whales to be, and we know they are conscious beings, very highly conscious beings, very aware, very sacred beings, that we recognize whales, specifically the ones that comes to the Dominican Republic waters are the humpback whales, which are known to be the singing whales. These are the whales that makes the longest songs and very complex songs. So when we go in a boat and we take a hydrophone so we can actually listen to the whales. And the way we talk to them is actually, we bring music. So we feel it's an exchange. They are singing and we listen to them real time, live. And we offer also human songs. So we chant to them. And in our experience, we can see an interaction. We see, they hear us and they respond to what we are doing with our presence. They come closer to the boat. They swim below the boat. They change a little bit the singing. It is a very real exchange, and many participants report to have a very life-changing experiences, messages, and just the sense of wonder that kind of exchange can happen. This interspecies exchange, in my experience, this is very evolutionary for pretty much everybody that goes in this kind of experience, that there is something beyond what can be explained, that that there is something that expands of what we feel is possible to be engaging with nature. So I will just like to offer a few seconds of one of the recordings we did. Last year, we recorded a long session we have with whales. I would just like to share the few seconds. So anyone that is listening, so just my offering will be just simply close your eye for a few seconds and feel what you feel. What you feel is the whale sharing. That's as simple as that. And whatever you feel, that's it. That's the communication. That's the way to talk. And as Tiokasin says, it's a two-way. We talk to nature too. Nature is listening, and we are listening to it. So just few seconds. This whale, which was very special. Well, this was just a short clip of the whale singing. It's not a professional recording. It was just done in the moment. You can get a sense of that there is a very complex and subtle and deep wisdom or message, or I mean, that we try not to put many words in it. We know there is something deep that is being exchanged and offered. And so I just wanted to share with everybody.
Could I offer a word here? I figured it out what the English words might mean for what you're describing a little bit, but we have wakaha, which is a consciously applied mystery to everything, and the communication that you're hearing, and you work with the whales, and it's a sense of coalescence to what am I saying here? Coalescence to innocence. So in this way, innocence is not affiliated with guilt at all. That's the duality. Innocence is every moment, and that's a consciousness. And when the whales are in every moment, where I just spoke is the past now, but every moment is innocent. So that gives you energy, it gives you communication capabilities, such as the whales. When I heard these whales, it was like something from outer space, I would say. You know, and I think that's the describing the communication, to coessence to innocence, to know that we are all innocent in every moment that we breathe, live, think, talk, whatever. This is innocent, and we've forgotten that within our lives. So coessence to innocence, right? And that you arrive at a point, peace with earth, and you know that earth is already putting you into practice by giving you this form. So I just wanted to say that.
Beautiful, Tiokasin. Thank you so much, and for leading us into this awareness of our inner innocence that we always have. And so we're now approaching the time of closing. I would like to give the floors to our anchor, Anuradha. So to begin this goodbye moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much to each and every one of the panelists for having helped us connect more deeply with ourselves and thereby with nature. So while there was a lot of discussions around it, I think Daniel's sharing of the Song of the Whales helped us to go deep into the dark blue ocean and listen to the language of nature itself. So this idea of nature was brought, the idea of the language of nature was brought out very beautifully by most of the panelists here. And the fact that there is a living tradition that is carrying on, there is this living tradition as well as an archive of how we can relate once more to that inherent link that we share, because we are part of that. We are not other than that, but we are part of that, of this evolution of Mother Nature herself. So thank you all for very beautifully making the yoga world, practitioners of the yoga world, recognize the importance of not just doing something on the mat and feeling connected to the earth then and there, but also to reach out and in their own ways connect to Mother Earth, connect to their own intuitive being first and foremost, and thereby spontaneously connecting to nature around us. So thank you again for your sharings, your wonderful sharings. We are now nearing the end of this session, and as is the custom, I would like to make the announcements for the next day's program. But when I come back to you, I have two requests for you. The first one is, if you could kindly let our participants know how they could reach out to you. How can they learn more about the work that you're doing, and in whichever way maybe add their own contributions to it or get inspired to do something on those lines in their respective places. So that is one. And secondly, what I would like you to think about is based on a question by Padma Priya ji, who's saying that in urban spaces, we are so far from the natural world, both within and without. What are some suggestions to renew this connection? So I would like to request you to share ways in which one can re-establish this connection with Mother Nature from our own indigenous environmentalist perspectives, and feel that greater sense of wellness for ourselves and for the world we live in. So with these words, I will go on to make the announcements and come back to you for your contact details mainly. So thank you. Kotiji, could I request you to please put up the banner? is the last of the days of the 30-day program that we had originally planned for the Global Festival of Yoga, where we will have 3 sessions, following which till the 31st of July, we will just have 2 sessions, morning and in the evening. But tomorrow morning session is by Apar Saoji. He's the Deputy Director of Academics, the School of Yoga and Naturopathic Medicine of S. Vyasa University, which is a very renowned yoga university in Bangalore. And they produce some of the most important publications in the yoga domain. So he's going to be talking to us on the importance of food for health, insights on a yogic diet. We've been looking at diet through various other sessions previously, but do attend this because food for health is combined here beautifully with food for thought and food for the soul as well. So please join that session in the morning. In the afternoon, we have another fabulous session by a very young yogi, Ben Vyate. He's a Tai Chi, Qigong and teacher, as well as a yoga teacher and a peace walker. His story is an amazing story of a journey across from Switzerland to India on foot. And he's going to talk to us about the way to practice everywhere. Tips on how he was able to achieve this fantastic feat of walking miles and miles in a day through different terrains and keeping his motivation and spirit alive and connecting, more importantly, connecting with different people from different parts of the world. He said when he was in Pakistan, he was like a Muslim and he followed all the rituals. When he came to India, he became like a Hindu. He was in Punjab, he became a Sikh. He's going to go to Dharmashala, he's become a Buddhist. So this tremendous free spirit is going to be, we're going to have an access to this free spirit of Ben's in the afternoon. And since we've been talking a lot about language, it's interesting for me to share about my own session, which is going to be on Sanskrit as a yoga and for yoga. So as Jenia started her session by saying that there is a lot of literature available in the yoga, about the yoga tradition in the Sanskrit language. And Shefali ji also mentioned about that, and there's some of it available also in the Buddhist literature that Judy talked to us about. So I will be trying to share with you how Sanskrit in itself has certain yogic attributes or certain yogic qualities and how important it is for the yoga world. So that would be a talk by me, Anuradha Chowdhury, and I'm presently a faculty at IIT Kharagpur at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, as well as at the Reiki Center of Excellence for the Science of Happiness. So with these few words, I'll come back to our esteemed panelists. So whom can I request to start? Judy, would you like to start for us and just let our audience know how they can reach out to you, how they can follow your work, your teachings?
Thank you. It sounds so exciting, all the next panels, and I was imagining this person walking across such a long pilgrimage, really, the spirit. I'm not sure the best way to reach me. I guess I would say 2 things that to find out a little bit about what I'm doing and some of my writings or blogs and things. The easiest would be to go to my website, which is judylief.com. And the other thing would be to go through my publisher, Shambhala Publications, and that lists several online classes that I've offered through them. Give us a little bit of a sense of what I'm up to. And the rest of what I'm up to, you'll never know. So anyway, I appreciate any interest. And once again, I just want to say I'm so honored to be with all of you and contribute to what little bit I could. Nice to hear and learn from you. I love the whales thing. I want to go on your whale thing, Daniel. I want to come on your little boat and commune. Yeah.
We're very grateful to you, Judy, for being part of this journey, this yogathon that my father called this exercise, this entire project that we've been doing the last 30 days. So grateful for your time and your sharing.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
I would now like to request Tiokasin to kindly share your contact. How can people reach out to you? How can they follow your work?
It's just First Voices indigenousradio.org, and within that website is the contacts that you can reach me by email or phone or other social media. But yeah, that's the primary one, and it has all the archives of all the radio shows for 28 years, from when I was younger to now this age, and it's all about Indigenous thought process, and it leads you to where we're at now. But First Voices indigenousradio.org. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I request Shefali ji to please share about how people can contact you for your work?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to thank everyone again for the opportunity to be a part of this. And I wanted to thank you for making this so accessible, both having it free and through different channels. It's amazing work and knowledge. So I'm in incubation right now. And so I've just been having dreams, and now I'm kind of coalescing those dreams. But I'm thinking about unifying all of the different types of work that I do with the land, soil regeneration, art, composting, spirituality, meditation, all of it under the term sacred repair. So set up a website. There's nothing there right now, but you can also follow me on Instagram at sacredrepair.com, and hopefully we'll see things there soon. Thank you. Oh, may I answer the question about the urban spaces? Because I was born and raised in New York City, in Manhattan. And so first, you're never apart from nature because you are nature. But I understand what you're saying. There are no landscapes for you to access that allow you some space. And so what I would say is, every little thing is something. So if you go outside and you feel the wind against your cheek, that's you remembering that there's this wind element around you. When you breathe, you're interconnected with everything. We're breathing in what is coming out of trees and people, and we're giving in return, in reciprocity. And I think one of the most important things is, if you can't observe things in their natural space, stars in the sky, if you can buy a plant, even one, and just take care of it, that is revolutionary. I think everyone needs to take care of something and learn what that feels like, because that is our work. And so at minimum, if you can do that, it'll be okay. Thank you.
Yes, that was a very beautiful, actionable plan that I think is not very difficult for many of us to practice. So thank you for that message. Could I request Jenia ji to please share your how people can reach out and connect to your work?
Thank you. But before that, I would also like to make a quick comment on this urban spaces and nature. Yeah, because what I think is that, what Shefali ma'am has mentioned is, I absolutely agree with this. But then again, I think that, there are two approaches. Like, one is this ecology or ecosystems in nature, and the other one is ecology or ecosystems of nature. So I think that we have to understand this, that, urban or cities, by their very definition, they are actually not self-sufficient. So, if you don't have a river, how can you actually kind of manage the water in, water out system? So one cannot think about water sanitation facilities in an urban space without, without having the understanding that definitely, the city has water bodies, it has rivers, it has pasture lands, nature, which has actually kind of surrounded this urban space. So I think we really need to pay a lot of respect to this metabolism, to this sustainable flows between city and nature. So yes, definitely we should pursue constructive activities like plantation of trees and things like that. We definitely need to really do this, all of us. And along with this, we also need to engage ourselves, we need to make ourselves aware about urban metabolism. And I don't know whether people would really like to reach out to me, but if in case if you want, then definitely you can just type my name in Google, and my institute details. Google will tell you my institute details, like my email ID, and I think I also my phone number is also there in my institute website. So, and that is my WhatsApp number as well. So if you, in case if you want to send me a WhatsApp or send me an email, please feel free and don't hesitate to do that. And finally, I would like to definitely thank all the panelists. I could really, really learn a lot. And I would like to thank, and I would definitely like to thank Daniel, of course, for the sounds of nature. It's really like, I mean, it's a different feeling altogether. Yeah, so thank you. And I would like to thank Vinay Chandra ji and Anuradha ji and Indica Yoga and GPIW for giving me this opportunity. And finally, I would like to say that, you know, I was not at all exposed to this field or to this domain of knowledge. But I need to really offer my gratitude to my friend, philosopher, mentor, colleague, Professor Anuradha Chaudhary, for giving me this chance to get exposed, you know, to this rich treasure of knowledge. And I really, really relish and cherish every bit of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenia, for those very kind words, and also for pointing out this importance of, you know, ecology. So the ecology in, what was that you just said?
From ecology in cities or ecology in cities.
That was
ecology of cities.
Yes, ecology in cities and ecology of cities. So thank you very much for making the distinction and making it very relevant for our people. So I would like to also mention that Jenia has written this book, Blue Infrastructures. Please do get hold of, get a copy if you can. And secondly, she offers also courses online. So please find her and you can learn more about her work on hydroculture, hydrosocial, etc. So thank you very much. Daniel, can we come to you and request you for how people can, we've been inspired by the sound, so how can we know more about it? How can we join in any way that we can?
Thank you. So I will just share in the chat my Instagram for anyone that wants to reach out. It's Conexión Natura, and I will just share my email in case anyone would like to reach directly to me. I will be happy to, more than welcome. And it has been a great blessing. So I would also like to share my gratitude to all the panelists, to you, Anuradha, and the Indiga Yoga team that I see how an incredible sustaining effort this is. All the participants that has co-created wonderful questions that has enriched so much the discussion. So deep, deep gratitude, and to Mother Nature that has been so alive with us in the conversation. Thank you.
And if you have any actionable tips that our audience can take home with them.
Yes, I would like to offer one of the participants shared something that I would like to, I echo, and it's like, make an effort. I will say, yeah, be aware, be conscious to live in every interaction with a smile inside of you and also in the other person. This is just a simple way to connect with the nature in all of us. So I can offer this as also as my something that I resonate with a lot. So thank you. It was also Krishnamurthy Subramanian who shared this. Thank you.
Very beautiful message. Can I come back to Judy Lief to please share how actively we can reconnect to nature within and without?
I think the best way is to come into silence and receptivity and listen and feel within our bodies in the way, as I first started out, the sense of feeling the multitudes, living multitudes within us and all around us.
Thank you. we've been listening to this, the importance of silence as a great connector in various discussions that we've had so far. And Tiokasin, over to you. How can we connect again within and without to Mother Nature? And if, could I request you for a song, a small song?
A song. Maybe not a song, but maybe the words that are part of a song is to find peace with earth is much more than finding peace on earth. And that's it. Peace with earth. Because we've been living for thousands of years, peace on earth, and it hasn't done us any good. So now we have to find peace with earth. And I think that's part of the solution if there is a problem. Yeah, thank you.
Very beautiful message again. And I think with Dina and all, that can be the topic of our next conference. So how do you establish peace with earth and not just on earth? All of the dialogues that GPIW has brilliantly organized have been like sowing seeds for new thoughts to germinate and take this work forward, this work of working with oneself and with everybody around us. So I'd like to express a heartfelt gratitude to the Global Peace Initiative of Women. So to Marian, Dina, Hannah, thank you very much for organizing this as part of the Global Festival of Yoga to celebrate wellness. With these few words, can I request Marian, Dina, and Hannah to please come on screen if you're there?
Thank you, Anuradha. It's a beautiful partnership, and I hope it's just the beginning of much work that we have to do together.
Yes. So we look forward to this continuing. We hope that this program of ours is not just been something for us individually, but collectively we are trying to build a community where we're promoting the idea of becoming ambassadors of wellness. So how can one become an ambassador of wellness in all the different domains of life? And in that, Mother Nature would play a very important part. So with these few words, I would just like to end with a mantra from the Vedas, which is Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. May all the worlds be happy. Thank you, one and all, for being here with us.